Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Dave.
And join us every Thursday for a new episode of Two Player Bros, a podcast about two guys who play way too many video games. Join me and Dave as we talk about the latest in Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and VR news, previews, and reviews. We have it all, and we play it all.
And join us every other week for Post Game, where we play through and dive deep into our favorite modern classics and new releases.
That's Two Player Bros, available every Thursday wherever you get your podcast, part of the Forgotten Entertainment family.
Hey, it's Andrew Morgan, host of the Nomcast, the Netflix original movie podcast. Each week, we review the biggest Netflix original movies with special guests from the film industry, the music industry, comedians, and of course, our fellow podcasters. Check us out on the web at nomcastpod.com. Follow us on the socials at nomcastpod. And most importantly, listen and subscribe to us wherever you get podcasts. Hit that beat one time.
Hi, I'm Mike Field.
I'm Pat Whalen.
Pat is a lifelong comic book geek.
And Mike is a filmmaker and storyteller.
So naturally, a bulk of our conversations surround the world of the Marvel movies. Some consider the MCU one of the greatest achievements in modern-day filmmaking, and others just think they're comic book movies. Each episode will tackle one film and discuss the differences between the comic book and what's on screen. We'll explore the growth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe from its inception to present day and beyond, and have a little fun along the way. You may not have asked for it, you certainly don't need it, but you'll be happy we're here, we think. This is yet another MCU podcast. Pat, we are now in space. That's right. We are boldly going.
To nowhere.
That's true. I was trying to mix franchises there. So welcome back. I am Mike, and that is Pat, as I point to him, but you cannot see that because we're on mics and on a podcast.
How's everybody doing?
You cannot answer that, so we assume we're doing well. So now we are here to talk about, I guess, I joke when I said we are now in space, but we are really talking about a new area of
frontier.
Yes, again, mixing franchises. We are talking about Guardians of the Galaxy. So we'll get into, how we'd like to do movie, then comic/movie comparisons, and then we dive into this movie's role within the entire MCU. So here we go. Guardians of the Galaxy was released on Friday, August 1st, 2014. At a runtime of 121 minutes, rated PG-13, production budget of $170 million. And I was going to go back and look, but I think that's on par with the last Thor or one of the...
Probably.
Yeah. Opening weekend, it did $94 million. Domestically, $333 million. Worldwide, $772 million. And honestly, it was a pretty big hit.
It was.
Yeah.
I think surprising hit, too.
It's one of those movies also that... I think it appealed to a lot more of a mainstream audience rather than just the Marvel fans or people who want. I mean, it's a summer movie, obviously, so that's what you're going to get. Written and directed by James Gunn. He also had help writing. Nicole Perlman wrote it as well. She actually goes on to do Captain Marvel. Gunn has done. He went on to do the second Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's going to be doing Suicide Squad 2. And I'm sure at this point the kerfuffle that Mr. Gunn caused.
But he's back.
He's back. He's back, but he almost wasn't back for the third one, whenever that's going to be. Composer Tyler Bates. He has done Watchmen and John Wick 3, which I'm always going to pump John Wick because I like that. Cinematography with Ben Davis, who was on to do Captain Marvel as well. And obviously, we all know who produced these movies. I'm not even going to say it. How about that? So we have a whole new list of people that have entered the MCU. And they obviously continue on, and we'll get to that later. But you have Chris Pratt coming in as Peter Quill, or Star-Lord, as he tries to get everyone to call him. Zoe Saldana as Gamora. Dave Bautista as Drax. Vin Diesel as Groot, or the voice of Groot. Bradley Cooper as the voice of Rocket. Lee Pace as Ronan. Michael Rooker as Yondu. Karen Gillian as Nebula, for all those Doctor Who fans out there. I say his name all the time. Jimon Hansu as Korath. Glenn Close is in this movie as Nova Prime, and then you have Benicio del Toro as the Collector, who kind of scatters about throughout the...
Yeah, he makes a couple other appearances.
And we'll dive into that as well. So, Pat, did you like this movie?
I did like this movie.
Do you like this movie? Is this... Now, this is the 10th movie, right? Did we say this is the 10th movie in the MCU?
Yes,
it is.
So it's what is it? The 4th in Phase 2. Yeah,
Right.
so it should be 10.
Okay. So the movie in and of itself, we just talked about it briefly, how it was appealing to a mainstream crowd. I think. I mean, just kind of in my experience of being at the theater, seeing a lot of people return and stuff like that to see the movie. Do you think this movie kind of transcended some people who are obviously people are there because it's an MCU movie, but it's really not connected anything to what we've seen previous, which we will get into. But the movie in and of itself, I guess, what did you appreciate more?
So I'm going to make a really bold statement.
Go for it.
And make a really bold statement that might have a lot of people turn this off, but I beg you to stay on.
I might have to interject here, but go ahead.
When I got out of this film, however many years ago this was,
6.
I said that this was the episode 1 that we were promised. The Star Wars episode 1.
So now you're attacking another franchise.
I'm not attacking. I enjoy episode 1. I was 10 when the movie came out.
Yeah.
So I'm a diehard for it. And that is a hill I will die on. But
that's a hill you're going to die on.
Right. I understand that. I was 10. It was great. We went and bought the action figures right afterwards.
Listen, there's a lot of things I liked when I was 10 that I don't like anymore. Just want to throw that out there.
Anyway, this one was a lot of fun. Like you said, it doesn't feel part of the Marvel universe. It still has that same kind of look and feel to it to a degree, same kind of colorization, cinematography. Nothing was off the reservation.
Okay.
And the humor was still in there, but you get a really fun space story that's essentially just told within the 2-hour time frame of this window. And we'll talk a little bit about how it connects later on and things connect back to it. But you had a hero that was, I think, or a protagonist that was enjoyable and interesting to follow.
He's enjoyable and interesting to follow to a degree.
We're gonna get to that. And then the sidekicks. I think the sidekicks all play well with each other. They all have a little bit of an arc themselves. And the space battles. Space battles were incredible. So when I say that this is the episode 1 we were promised, that's what I was talking about. That, you got a really good protagonist. You don't have a whiny 10-year-old.
You don't have somebody yelling at B?
You got a whiny 30-year-old at some points, but you don't have a whiny 10-year-old. You got really good space battles, and it builds this whole new universe that we haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm. So my first note watching this movie is, I go, the mother dies? Is this a Disney movie? Oh, wait, it is.
My first note after the mother died, hug the kid.
Yeah.
Hug the kid. His mother died and you stick him out in the hallway by himself.
Now, mind you, yes, there's a lot of these movies when they go back to the 80s, there's so, like, especially like with Stranger Things and there's so much devoid of emotion at some point. Like there's just, like, granted, kids played outside all the time.
Yeah.
And, and then I remember because I was 10 in 85. Yes, I'm old. I remember the stories of the white paneled vans that are searching for children. And that was such a big deal. It was so scary. And then I read back, I think a couple months ago, I read it. It was just like, it was one time in one area and it like blew up and everyone thought it was like there were predators everywhere. Listen, there's predators out there, no doubt. But like, everyone played outside. Your door was open. I'm not trying to be like nostalgic. Like I'm the old guys in the Bartles and James commercials who are sitting on the front porch, but that's what it was. You just were like outside all the time. And people didn't really like, there was no kind of like emotional connection at some point. Like you didn't, but yeah, agreed. Like, it's just like his mother's died and he's upset and he's angry and they start getting mad at him because he won't hold her hand. He's 10.
And they leave him in the hallway with nobody else where everybody else gathers around the dead mother.
Yeah.
There's not an aunt or something that's going to escort and sit with the kid.
I know. And I get it. They're all upset. She's passing away. That's his daughter. And he runs off and there's apparently nobody else working in the hospital.
All the lights are shut off.
I know. Sorry, that's it. Lights out. So it's whatever. It's a movie. I understand that. I don't think he's 10. I think he's like 13 or something like that. He's a little older, so I shouldn't have said he's 10. But I will say that it is one of the more. I thought it was one of the more stronger openings of the series of the entire MCU. I know it's always gonna be filtering in and out, but I thought it was a good opening. It kind of sets it up. I thought maybe the title should have came in after that, but they kind of keep going.
I think the title Personally, I think
dancing.
Yeah, I think the title works well because like you're gonna bring in this goofy title. You don't know who he is. You don't know who any of the alien, the Ravagers are at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I think putting the goofy title into the middle of the song sets up really what this movie's about. This isn't about death and mother dying, although that's certainly
part of it. Yeah.
But it's really about this group of goofy heroes.
Well, I took the mother angle, and I know that they bring her back at the end when he's reaching out. He's got the stone in his hand and she's reaching out. I took the mother angle to be like, he went off onto his own. He never really had a family.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of like a quote unquote loner. You don't really get a lot of the stuff with Yondu in terms of like what actually happened there. Like I know they in the second one they kind of do like he's a father figure,
yep.
But like in this movie, I don't get any of that, and I'm supposed to understand that. You know what I mean? Until like the very end when he has the troll and he's laughing, but like I don't get that.
Yondu makes the comments like, well, I raised you. And then Peter fires back. It's like, yeah, but I cleaned up and did everything for you.
Right.
Like it was like a Dread Pirate Roberts situation. we're really just going full boat with all these references.
That's a Princess Bride reference for anyone out there. You should watch that movie. It's pretty good.
Was that 1985?
Princess Bride? I think that's 87.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that they don't really, they kind of hint at the Yondu thing. You're supposed to understand that he like treated him like a son. If you treat your son like the stepmother treated Cinderella. I do appreciate that they go into further detail in the next movie.
But do you think that cheapens what you had? Not cheapens, but changes the way you view this one? So basically my whole point was that the mother angle was that he doesn't have a family.
Right.
And then now he's reaching out for his new family. Like I can discern that and you can discern that right now, but I don't think that's maybe spelled out enough for me. Granted, I understand it's a summer movie, it's a Marvel movie, but they rely a lot more on joke stuff and them riffing and the plot rather than about Peter Quill's character. And I think that when I was talking about how he gets a little bit too much, that's why.
I think that drives home some of the problems with him later on into Infinity War and Guardians 2 is that they've almost, I'm going to throw in another reference here, but they did the Pirates of the Caribbean thing where that first movie, Curse of the Black Pearl, is the great. Jack Sparrow character is well-rounded, three-dimensional, but he's funny. And then when you get into Dead Man's Chest and the later films, they focus solely on the funny. Yes. And I think they do that a lot with Peter here as well, is like people really connected with the funny. But the thing then I think, you could dive deeper than surface level is the character arcs and him coming to terms with not only his mother, but then his father in the next film. Mm-hmm. And then Gamora as well in the later films. Well, in this movie, Quill is definitely the lead. He does have tendencies where he acts like we talk about when you have a comedy, you have like somebody who's the zany person who makes all the jokes, and you have the straight man who's the lead who has to play off of that. His reaction is the audience, all that stuff. He is supposed to be kind of like the straight man in this, but then at some points he becomes the zany guy, and that's something that's prevalent throughout now. So I can't really give this a negative for that. And that's Chris Pratt's persona. That's his charm. I absolutely understand why he's the lead in this, and he's a good lead. He's a funny character, but he's not a deep character. I got a write-in question for you. Okay. We talked about bringing together an ensemble in the Avengers episode and how you kind of tie these different characters and the different arcs in there. But the difference with Avengers and Guardians is we were able to meet all those characters beforehand. Yeah. What do you have to do differently in this version? And do you like the way they approached it in slowly introducing each character to make them part of the team, or what goes into your head as you're seeing some of the stuff? Well, I think it works. I mean, I think you need to have a knowledge of the comic world in terms of Gamora and Nebula. Yes. In terms of why they're with this dude, this big blue dude. Yeah. Thanos. Not Thanos. The other guy. He's the purple dude. Sorry. Yeah. Ronan. Okay. But they do set her up well. They set Quill up well, and Rocket and Groot, they go more in depth with them in the second movie, which is what you do with supporting characters. Mm-hmm. I mean, this movie is Quill's movie, which is probably why I wanted a little bit more. But the supporting characters are fine. The way they get together is an organic kind of way in terms of the organic storytelling. So I was okay with that. Now, I don't not like this movie. I enjoy this movie. I do think it kind of stalls a little when they get to nowhere because of plot. Like they have to, like Drax calling out Ronan. and telling him to come there.
And that's because they couldn't figure out how they could get there.
Right.
Anyway, I mean, I know I talk about sometimes, maybe on the other podcast, but I talk about character actions and characters affecting the story. And that's one of those moments. I don't know if I just probably, it felt forced. The whole idea of why the slave grabs the stone when they're at the collector.
Oh, right. Was she a spy for Thanos or Ronan, or was she called to the stone like it was the Ring of Power? What was it? But yeah,
and
you're right.
My note was like her reasoning makes little sense except for story plot. So like stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's some stuff that just feels a little forced. That being said, I understand why that's there, and I get the explanation. But I don't know. That's just me.
That's fair. It makes sense.
So you say you liked it.
Yes.
So nothing in the story kind of you didn't dig?
You bring a good point about the Drax scene. One thing I noticed in this was they kill a lot of people. Like our protagonists are not heroes. They kill a lot. At the prison, later on, at Ronan's ship, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of violence, a lot of stuff happening, but it's space. So it kind of gets a little bit of a pass. The ending with the dance-off, I get what it's doing.
Yeah.
I was just a little, it doesn't carry well 6 years later.
Yeah, that ending feels, or at least that part of the ending, because I like the ending when they grab the stone and all that stuff. That's good.
That is good.
But that ending did feel like, hey, what if I challenge them to a dance off? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like go give it a shot. We'll put the cameras on, and then they just kept it.
I am always a fan of if it's organically within the story and I can see it happening. Okay. I get that, because the fact that he's dancing in the opening credit sequence, I'm supposed to believe that's going to translate to him dancing at the end when all hope is lost and all the dude has to do is just drop the hammer.
I agree. That's what the more I watch it, that's the one part that really befuddles me.
Yeah.
But speaking of the music, I know that the story here was that James Gunn had kind of written it around some of these musical beats.
The 70s.
Yeah.
Music,
Does that,
okay.
His whole thing was like, how do I make these characters relatable? And let me bring in music that's relatable.
Sure.
Does that work?
I think so.
Yeah.
It works. It works so much that they bring it forward to the third Thor movie.
In pieces of Infinity War, I think.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So why don't we get to maybe some of the differences between the comics and the movies and this movie, excuse me. I have many, many notes, but maybe it's best if, since this is a brand new foyer into the Marvel world, and why don't you kind of give a brief, I don't know,
overview
of like where Guardians came from and all that stuff.
So the Guardians of the Galaxy team that we see on screen with Star-Lord and Gamora and Drax and Groot and Rocket, that's not the first incarnation of the team. The name for the team came from a group that was created in the late 60s. It was, at the time, it was kind of like the thing that was happening in comics, the Silver Age. Marvel was basing a lot of their stuff on science. So that's why you see a lot of their heroes building their tech or building their armor or radioactive bombs or whatever gamma bombs going off. So this was kind of, let's just throw everything sci-fi at the wall and see what sticks. So the story goes that the then editor-in-chief of Marvel had conceived of this Guardians group as like a guerrilla fighting group facing off against Russians and Chinese in a divided America. Doesn't sound very spacey, because it wasn't. So he was a little bit too busy to pitch it. So he handed it off to another writer, this new writer, Arnold Drake. And with Drake and Stan Lee, they came up with this more interplanetary, space-based storyline. This team was incredibly different. I mean, we could maybe go into it, but I think leaving that aside, it stars a random Yondu, which we'll get into.
A random Yondu.
And it was set in the 31st century on an alternate Earth.
Nice.
So it's not the one that we've come to know and love. But if you flash forward to 2008, writers Dan Abnett and Andy Lanning, they had relaunched the team with new members. And these new members include the ones that we've gotten to know with costumes and designs similar to what we see on screen. So it was Star-Lord, Groot, Gamora, Rocket, Drax, and then you had other characters, Adam Warlock and Phyla Vell. And I'm not going to get into Adam Warlock because there's so many rumors, there's so many things that everybody wants to see him in different points in the Marvel universe. He has a big tie into the Thanos storyline. I'm not sure if we're ever going to see him ever. Because the Thanos storyline's over with. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Adam. But this Guardians team first appeared in a crossover called Annihilation Conquest. It was actually in the midst of the Civil War storyline that was going on, and we're going to dive into that in depth when we get to that episode. So all the Earth heroes were dealing with the Superhero Registration Act. Marvel was doing a separate space crossover, the Annihilation crossovers, which were focused on all of the cosmic characters. And these crossovers, just to kind of give you some background, they usually use them as a way to either cancel books that they want to end, kill off characters that they're not interested in, relaunch books or launch new books and bring back characters to life.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a backdoor pilot, essentially, for a lot of this stuff. And so after the crossover ended, they spun it out into a new team. So the Guardians were formed with the best intentions, but the team learns that Star-Lord had used Mantis's powers, which we'll see in the next movie, to make the different members a little bit more empathetic and join up, which at that point, everybody quits because they don't like Star-Lord doing that.
Well, I can imagine.
He's kind of a dick.
No, I didn't realize that. I will get to the second one, but I didn't realize Mantis was in the comic. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
But continue.
They've been relaunched on a number of occasions. They came back at various points in different times. They got relaunched in 2013, I believe it was, with Iron Man joining the team. So he took off, went to space, and he joined the Guardians. Right. Kitty Pryde, who is in the X-Men, you'll remember her from the X-Men movies as Ellen Page.
Yes.
She joins the Guardians as Star-Lord's girlfriend. I don't know if we're able to see that. One thing to note on the Iron Man joining the Guardians.
Yeah.
Because I do think that was like 2012, 2013. There was a lot of rumors that he would make a cameo or a post-credit scene in one of the Guardians movies to tie everything together, or at some point, maybe the end of Age of Ultron, he takes off and goes to space.
Right.
That was all the rumors that were floating around at the time.
I have a note that he was going to make a cameo, but he wasn't being cooperative. The Downey, so
because he was renegotiating.
I'm sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. So they all came back in 2008, but they were all like, so Star-Lord, because I have notes here, I think I sent this to you. Star-Lord appeared in Marvel Preview 4.
Yep.
Rocket Raccoon in 7. Gamora was in Strange Tales 1-8. So tell me what Strange Tales is, and then tell me, because Groot was in this thing called Tales of the Astonished. Are these the Strange Tales and the Tales of the Astonished, these are these all wrapped within the Guardians series, or are they just separate stuff?
They're separate stuff.
And they pulled them in.
Yeah, they're separate stuff, and they pulled them in to kind of back up and give you some comics history. They weren't always, nowadays when you go to the comic book store and you look at the titles, it's Batman, it's Superman, it's Daredevil, it's Spider-Man, it's the title character.
Right.
And they have their own title run book. The only ones that kind of still remain, although have been co-opted by their characters, something like Detective Comics from DC, or Action Comics, which stars Superman, and Detective stars Batman. They originally were published as a Detective Comics. It was a book filled with detective stories.
Okay.
Same thing with Tales to Astonish, Tales of Suspense, Tales of Fear, whatever they are.
Right.
They didn't have just like one 22-page story focused on one character. They had multiple stories, multiple characters. Tales to Astonish 13, and had a little bit of maybe like Groot's storyline, and then it had another storyline, maybe Doctor Strange was in there, or whatever.
So it's like an anthology series.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. I get that. And so Yondu was a part of the original team?
He was a part of the team from the 60s.
Okay.
He was...
Same guy, same type of character in the movie, or different?
Different.
Did he have that little arrow thing that he can control?
So he was known as Centaurian. He was from the planet Centaur.
Okay.
Not a horse guy. He was blue skin.
That was my next question.
He had a much larger red fin on his head. Like if you look him up, he's completely different than the Michael Rooker character. I
think I've seen that. I now remember the giant spiky hair. Yes, I think I've seen that.
And instead of using the whistle needle thing that he has, he actually shoots a bow and arrow, and he can control it with sound waves. Okay. Similar to what he does here, a lot differently. And it took place on an alternate Earth. Didn't really tie into the Peter Quill storyline. Mm-hmm. But I think as we discussed in a couple of other episodes, as these things do, the video version tends to influence the comic version. Because if you like this Michael Rooker character, maybe you want to come in. And then if you start reading about who's this weird giant finned guy that's shooting a bow and arrow and living, a millennia away from us. So Star-Lord got his own series in, I think, like 2014, 2015. They introduced a version of Yondu that exists in this universe 616, the main Marvel Comics universe that we've touched on. And this is the one that looks like the Michael Rooker character. He leads the Ravagers, and he has a little bit more menacing appearance. I don't know if anybody's ever played the game Rogue Trooper. It was a comic. It was a video game. It was actually okay. But he looks a little bit more like this blue, like muscled soldier.
Okay.
So that's where Yondu comes in.
So the note I also have here is in the comics, Nebula is actually Thanos' granddaughter instead of daughter like they have here. So this Gamora Nebula thing that they do where they're sisters isn't true?
No.
Okay.
I like what they do with them here. Well, they weren't ever like full sisters. They were adopted half sisters.
But it's a little bit more of a relationship quandary, if that's a word. It is a word, but if that's the right word, between Gamora and Nebula, and that extends throughout the entire rest of the run, that they would be rivals almost.
Yes.
Rivals for affection for Thanos, who clearly doesn't like Nebula. So, I think that's a little more interesting. I didn't know that she was the granddaughter of Thanos.
Yeah. One thing I want to note too, though, we're looking at the comics here is Groot.
Yes.
He was same thing introduced in Tales to Astonish.
Yep.
It was back in the 60s or like 1960. He comes from a planet of these tree creatures, and he was the villain that appeared in that story.
Okay.
The original story, it has nothing to do with superheroes. He crashes into a town on Earth, and a doctor discovers him and discovers that termites can beat him, and he used those to do that. And it just seemed like something like out of an old school kind of Spielberg movie, or like
stories. Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. I like that. Well, we talked about Nebula. So Ronan the Accuser.
Yes.
He is not serving under Thanos. He's more of a partner.
He's doing a job for Thanos.
Right. But in the comic, he serves him. I have a note here that he's there's a combination of Ronan that you see on screen. But go ahead.
I was gonna. One thing I do want to know is that they build up this movie really. They build up the whole universe because we see him again in Captain Marvel.
Oh yeah,
and so Ronan, he is similar to some of these other guys. He's been around since the 60s. Been repurposed here and there. In the Ultimate universe, he's the son of Thanos.
Okay,
and then here, in this one, he's just a partner to him. So they take pieces and they, still include some of that interaction with him.
Okay. So it's not more about his look, but just kind of his motivations and his background.
And he, in the comics too, and you'll remember the character from Captain Marvel, the Supreme Intelligence, Annette Bening's character.
Yeah.
He had plans to overthrow her because she was the head of the Kree Empire. That's, what he's part of. And he was always heavily involved in the Kree Skrull Wars, which we see again brought up in Captain Marvel.
So this is going to be a loaded question on my part, because I'm sure it's a long, long answer, but do the best you can. So they go to nowhere.
Yes.
And it's a base in the comic I have. It's a base for Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, it's not what it was, but this nowhere is in the head of a celestial, right? Is that right in the comic?
I don't remember in the comic.
So explain the Celestials to me.
I think
that's my loaded question.
I think I emailed you back and said we're going to hold off.
You don't want to do that? Okay, that's fine.
And the only reason I'm holding off on the Celestials here is because we have the Eternals movie coming out, and the Celestials are a big piece of the Eternals movie. Plus, you have in Guardians 2, the Ego character. So Kurt Russell's character, he falls in line with a lot of that stuff. So we're teasing you. We're teasing the audience for for Guardians Volume 2. I'm not trying to avoid the question. Just want to save some content for the next one.
Well, then how about this then? So the nowhere it wasn't in the head of a celestial, as they say in this movie,
Right.
in the comic. It was just
It was a base. It was like a place where they could teleport across the galaxy.
Was it
just-
like the Nowhere You See?
No,
Yeah,
no,
okay.
it wasn't Mos Eisley on steroids. is
They're
what they
mixing
give you.
brain juice or whatever they're mixing.
Yeah, no, it was solely a base, and they could use a teleporter to kind of fast travel across the galaxy.
So then why put it in the movie like that? I
think
wonder why
it's-
do that.
I think it's a name that people recognize, and it's an Easter egg that Marvel can say. Oh, the fans will go and say, "Oh man, look at that!" And I think as we get further into these films, you'll see that Marvel does that a little bit more and more because they understand the appeal of the next day conversation, the Monday morning at the water cooler type conversation, where it's like they know that there's a cottage industry of people on YouTube and on blogs and stuff are going to say, "Did you catch all 55 Easter eggs in this film?" Which, by the way, there's another one, Cosmo the Space Dog, used to be
Oh,
kind
I
of their
saw
like
that,
head
yeah.
security at Nowhere for the Guardians team, but he was trapped in the Collector's
I saw
cage.
that. I thought that was just some kind of reference to us sending animals. To
That
space.
is
Okay.
originally that's where the character came from. Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, I think Marvel, as you start getting deeper and deeper into the universe and the content, they're like, well, we could just, we have a planet or we have this character over there that doesn't really do much, but if we give him a name that people recall, people are going to go look it up. And
Okay.
we're going to see more conversation about our film.
Okay.
And I don't think that's a bad model.
No. So tell me about the Infinity Watch.
So the Infinity Watch, they're essentially a group of heroes, 6 heroes that work together to protect the Infinity Stones and the gems, whatever they're called.
I thought it was an actual watch.
No.
Okay.
It's kind of like the Night's Watch.
I thought it was like a fancy Apple Watch, but go ahead.
No, it's a fancy watch. You just put all the gems instead of the big gauntlet. The gauntlet is so 1987. You gotta go with the watch now. There's been a couple teams led by Adam Warlock, Doctor Strange, and Loki even had one. Drax and Star-Lord have been members of it. There's usually 6 members, 1 member for each stone. I actually think this would make a good Disney Plus show.
Okay.
Where you could, I don't know what they're going to do with the Infinity Stones now that Cap had returned them to where they need to be and Thanos is dead and
Yeah, no one else can go back and grab them. Yeah,
I don't know.
Okay.
So I don't know if you do like an Infinity Watch series, maybe as like a sequel to Loki. So you keep Tom Hiddleston involved. I don't really know what you do. Maybe you get Bautista as Drax on it. Kind of make it like a Legends of Tomorrow show on the CW where they time travel and they could, go to different periods and stuff. I think that would make an interesting show, but that's basically what it is. They just have adventures keeping the gems safe.
Okay. Well, you brought up Drax, and I have here that in the comic book he was human.
Yes.
Okay. So what's the deal?
So he's a human, Arthur Douglas. Him and his wife are out for a drive. Thanos' spaceship comes in and he attacks them.
Wait, hold on. Just randomly attacks this couple.
Well, he thinks that they saw his ship, so
Okay,
he needs
all
to
right.
eliminate them.
Jeez.
Because comics, so they're out for the drive. They get attacked. The wife survives and actually becomes a character called Moondragon, who joins up Infinity Watch and becomes part of the Guardians at various points and takes does adventures in space. They take Douglas's body. So there's a god named Kronos who's right in line with those Celestials and with Thanos, and he takes Douglas's spirit and puts it into this powerful body. And one thing to know with Drax in the comics, he's a little bit more green skinned with the red line drawing, so he would look a little bit more like Gamora. So I think that they tone back and made it this kind of chalky color, just so you didn't have the two. You could diversify.
Right.
The images standing next to each
That makes
other.
sense.
So he battles. Drax fights Thanos on a number of occasions. Eventually, when not the Carol Danvers Captain Marvel, but a other Captain Marvel beats Thanos, Drax then fights that Captain Marvel because he's mad that he can't fight Thanos.
So Captain Marvel's bad? Oh, Drax is bad, right?
They reference in the movie that he was once Ronan's henchman, so they take away all of the human story piece of this.
Oh, okay.
So they put him in line with Ronan. I wonder if we'll see in the next Captain Marvel movie because Ronan, was in it.
Yeah.
If we'll see a little bit more of that Drax Ronan connection, so that we could get, maybe we get Drax's, not that I think we need it, but we might get Drax's origin story where we actually see the death. And it's a way to keep Bautista and another, familiar face involved in the Captain Marvel films.
Okay.
And brighten up some of the dourness.
All right. Well, let's transition.
Yeah.
So let's go into this movie's role within the universe, within the MCU. Now, this we talk about when we first started. We talked about how welcome to space, and this is kind of like our first foray for the Marvel world into space, which is going to set up the whole. I mean, this feels like the beginning of Endgame's. You know what I mean? That whole thing.
Yes.
Like the first phase, everything up until this point has just felt like standalones, and this is the Marvel universe. Oh, there's stuff there. You don't know about this. You don't know about that. There's Thor, and I know that Thor is from space, so I get that. But Thor's stuff is mainly on Earth at this point. We don't get to Ragnarok until the third, and I think Ragnarok's. I mentioned it before, is deeply influenced in terms of its style and its look and its promotional campaign from Guardians.
Absolutely,
Guardians was the first movie to earn more than $300 million and not have Iron Man in it. So it was the first movie in the MCU to be successful without the Iron Man character, which actually goes to show you how popular the Iron Man character was compared to the others, which I'm surprised. I think because I actually prefer the Captain America character, but I think because Captain America is in the past and it's more of I think that people don't want to see that, which I can always dig on World War II era, that kind of stuff. Right. So I think that's probably why Captain America isn't as popular. And plus, Robert Downey Jr. is very charismatic as Iron Man, as Tony Stark. So I understand that. And it was the first. And to that regard, Iron Man uses popular music, AC/DC.
Yep.
Guardians of the Galaxy does the same things with 70s and 80s music. Like I said, this feels like the beginning of. Now, whether they knew that, I don't know.
I agree. Like if we look at the past 3 movies that we have watched in this phase, so Thor 2, Captain America 2, Iron Man 3, this is the biggest stark contrast. Like those almost seem like the doors closed on some of those characters.
Right.
And then when you get to here, it's like, we're going to spend 5 minutes telling you all about the Infinity Stones. We've slightly teased them. People have been on the internet looking up, rumors and stuff, but now we're going to give you the origin story on the Infinity Stones, which are going to be the MacGuffin that drives the next 12 movies. And I think, I agree with what you're saying.
So the elements that are basically setting up the rest of what's going to be happening in the next couple movies, or whatever, to the end game is the Power Stone, the Thanos meet, where you learn about Thanos, and I guess the Collector, because the Collector comes in later on.
Yeah, he makes an appearance in Infinity War, and did we already see it with Thor? So yeah, he was in the teaser for Thor 2,
right.
Dark World. I found it interesting, on the Thanos topic that. We've been told that he's been played up as this Avengers villain, and then now he appears in his most screen time in a very non-Avengers film.
Well, that strikes me as, let's I want to get to this. Let's get Thanos in there more. Let's talk about Thanos and develop that, and let's connect him to this movie. Let's connect him to Ronan. Ronan's already connected to Thanos. He's got 2, Nebula and Gamora are connected to Thanos. So let's start that. Whether they kind of knew where they were going, I don't know. Maybe they might have had an idea, but they were definitely like, "This is what we're doing. Let's go." We're in the middle of phase 2.
Yep.
What do you really think their plan was? End of phase 3. We're gonna wrap this up. Now, mind you, the 2 phases were 6 movies. The first 2,
yeah.
The third phase is 12, 13,
something like that.
Yeah, it's bigger.
Yeah.
So I'm like, because I'm wondering, like, stuff like, did they anticipate how popular Black Panther would be, so that they knew that they had to get Black Panther into the last? Did they anticipate Captain Marvel's success?
I don't think they necessarily anticipated Captain Marvel's success, because she's not. They premiered that movie, and then like 2 months later, Endgame came out,
and they had to make excuses for her not to be there, because she could just rip up everybody, and that was it. It's over.
Yeah, which we'll touch on. I mean, I think they were able to get the rights to Spider-Man 2, so they wanted to put a Spider-Man movie in.
Well, that's the other thing too. Like when they started this, they didn't think that they were going to get Spider-Man.
So then they had the this is kind of operating on the same we talked about that Annihilation storyline happening at the same time as the Civil War storyline in the comics, where you got the space stuff and you got the Earth stuff working simultaneously, kind of in parallel with each other. And then all the while, the Thanos villain is coming up.
Do they know like when this movie takes place in terms of the timeline?
So it takes place 26 years after 1988.
Okay, so 2014. So it's basically taking place right after the last movie, which is
right after Captain America and Thor and Iron Man 3.
So it's in chronological order almost.
Yes.
Okay. It's almost a standalone. It's setting up stuff, not to its detriment. Age of Ultron.
The next
big
one.
problem with that.
Yeah.
It sets up stuff that's just, why is Thor in this bath again? But stuff like that. So now I know we've already know what happens in the second movie. In terms of these characters, I'm wondering about a couple things. If you think you're going to see in the third movie for Guardians of the Galaxy, which I would assume wraps up this kind of like, I mean, obviously, if you have not watched these movies, I'm sorry if I'm about to spoil something for you, but they kill off Gamora in Infinity War. They bring her back in Endgame, but she's a different Gamora. She's from a different time period, right? Now you can recreate all the awkward I love you stuff from Peter Quill and you know what I mean? Which they kind of started doing in Endgame a little. So Rocket has a soulmate.
Rocket does have a soulmate.
Do you think that that's going to come into play? Do you think they're going to explore? I think he said he was exploring Rocket more.
I would hope so. I think Rocket is, I enjoy the Rocket character. Probably most of a lot of these guys.
Of the Guardians.
Of the Guardians, yeah. The joke at the time and the memes that were going around, because this is pre Patty Jenkins on Wonder Woman. This is when they still couldn't get the Wonder Woman film off the ground. I know Joss Whedon had worked on it and many others. The joke was that Marvel could make us feel emotional about a raccoon in a tree, and DC couldn't put out a movie about a woman. Like that was how bad it was getting for DC at the time. I think putting out, focusing on Rocket instead of Quill. Instead of, you could do the Gamora stuff and the Quill stuff in the background, but I think Rocket's really shined in Infinity War when he had the moments with Thor and they went to build him a new hammer. He's really shined in his moments in Endgame when he was the only one that was kind of still sticking around, giving him a moment to shine and do his own thing. At some points, I think Bradley Cooper brings out more emotion in a voice than Chris Pratt does.
Oh, shot across the bow.
Then Chris Pratt does in the,
but
acting.
But Rocket doesn't have a moment where he can be doused in red liquid and just sit there with his rippling
Zero Dark 30 abs. Everybody's like, oh, he got in shape for Moneyball. It's like, yeah, but did you see him in Moneyball?
Yeah.
He really got in shape for Zero Dark 30. Let's be honest here. But yes, so Rocket does have a soulmate, a girlfriend, a lady friend, whatever you want to call her.
Lady Lila.
Lila.
Sentient otter.
Yes.
So what is her deal?
So that's it.
Don't just say she's a sentient otter.
She's a sentient otter. Apparently there was a tie-in video game to this movie.
Like Crash Bandicoot?
No, like a bad game. Crash Bandicoot's a great game. It was a tie-in. Everybody makes a video game just to sell it. Yeah, so that's what she is. She's a sentient otter that, again, gets... I'm
gonna imagine, not to cut you off, but I'm gonna imagine she's going to be somebody they're gonna connect, like, because they don't explain how, like, who does the stuff.
Yeah, I would like to see them.
I think that
do that with her.
You've already done the Quill and Gamora stuff, which you can, like you said, you can do in the background because you've already done that as a major plot point in this movie, so you can't really do that again. Drax stuff. Drax is a supporting character. I really don't think you can give Drax.
No, and you could put Drax in Captain Marvel as Ronan's henchman and give him a different layer to his character. You could show him in there and give him a different layer to that character, but really focus on Rocket.
And you've already seen Groot do his transformation from dying in this. If you didn't know, he dies in this one. Becomes a stick. I wonder, like, when they did the stick and he's dancing and he's that was in the first one, right?
That was in this one. That's like the mid-credits scene here.
I wonder when they did that, they were just, their eyes were lit up with dollar signs where they're like, oh my God, And as Pat points to the, will you have it over there?
Yeah.
Oh, of course he does. Does it dance if we start?
If we put
turn
batteries
on?
into it,
For
will.
crying out loud. You're just one of them, Pat. You're the flock. But anyways, that's fine. They probably loved that, and they were like, yes, the same thing to do with Baby Yoda and when the Mandalorian came out and all that stuff. So that's fine, even though that's not Yoda. So that's fine. They've already done the Groot stuff where he becomes a teenager, because in the second one they do the whole thing where he's a teenager, and it's funny and it's relatable for me right now. So I think exploring the rocket stuff is probably smart. I think he said he wanted to do that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. He tweeted about it and said that he wanted to do it. He was tweeting during quarantine, doing our rewatch of the films.
Who wasn't?
Right. One thing that he did know, and we kind of give some of the filmmakers crap for this, is are they just a TV director coming in and doing what the studio says? And whether this is just keeping to the party line, he's back in Marvel's good graces and he's trying to be good. The only thing he said was that the only thing Marvel mandated was the Thanos cameos and the Thanos pieces in there, and include the origin of the Infinity Stones. So Marvel was already planning, years ahead, that they're going to need this, and they were going to use space to do it. For the most part, it feels like he put his own personality in there.
I think he's able to.
Yes,
because it was separate from everything else.
It was unknown. It was new characters.
Right. But when the second one comes out, now he has to do stuff.
Yes.
Now there's probably more of a mandate, which is what happens when you're
successful.
Forward. Absolutely. And that's just part of the game.
Yeah. Because this was a bold statement by Marvel to bring him in.
Sure.
Have you seen any of his other films?
So I have.
Trauma films?
You're talking about the Night of the Creeps kind of spoof, the Slither.
That, and then Super,
yes.
which is the one with Rainn Wilson, which is, I went on a whole kick with that. Griff the Invisible, Defendor with Woody Harrelson, these like real world superheroes. It's overly violent.
It is, and it's not great. It's okay. Slither is the same way. Slither's like, I remember Night of the Creeps. If you remember 80s horror, there were like these Slithers, they're little leech kind of things. They're little like these little monsters that get inside you and they control you. It's disgusting. But Night of the Creeps is so like 80s horror. And I watched Slither, and it's okay. His movies beforehand were fine. They were fine. They had the same kind of jokes, and even like this movie's fun. This movie's a fun movie.
It is.
But I mean, I can give you more movies that I enjoy, that I like much better, but it's a fun movie. It is what it is. It's a big summer movie. I mean, I just told you I've been watching Twister on Netflix and I know it's terrible. I know that there's stuff in there that I'm just like, oh man, stop. But I don't care.
Just turn it back on.
I mean, I will still, I don't know why I still laugh when Philip Seymour Hoffman goes Greenwich. It's, I know I'm on a tangent, but yes. So no, it's a fun movie, but I have seen his other stuff. Yeah. And I mean, I'm interested to see his Suicide Squad, because the first one was
The first one was The first one was bad.
There's some stuff that's all right. The Will Smith stuff's good. He's
Will Smith didn't want to be in that movie.
I know, but his stuff was all right. I enjoyed it.
All right.
I said one part of it I liked. It's not that I didn't say the movie's great. I'm interested to see what he does. That's all.
He's got a good cast in the next one too.
You just can't put box office poison Jai Courtney in there and you're all set.
Oh God,
I feel bad because I don't mind Jai Courtney, but like, yes, when he's in movies, they bomb.
Jai Courtney needs a moment like Taylor Kitsch has.
Yeah,
where he is box office,
which is terrible. They're both decent actors.
But when you put him in Waco or True Detective season 2,
Waco's fantastic.
Waco was amazing.
True Detective series. This isn't what the podcast is about, Pat.
We're just talking about.
But I hear you.
Box office.
Agree.
Yeah,
agreed. People who are sometimes box office poison don't deserve to be. So
true.
We'll just leave it at that. Okay.
That's all I got.
All right, I'm out. Now I leave, and Pat's gonna give you some recommended reading, and we'll see you next time for
Age of Ultron.
Age of Ultron. So we're gonna get back. Wait a minute. So that's the 5th movie.
And then Ant-Man.
Wow, that's the movie they used to wrap up the phase.
Yeah, well, it kind of wraps up with Age of Ultron.
So then we're 5. But phase 2 is considered. Ant-Man's considered phase 2. Interesting. Interesting. All right. Well,
Did you just...
I don't know. Listen, it's been so long ago. What, 6 years?
I know if you said
so much stuff has happened.
I want to know
Pat.
if you said interesting on purpose.
Did I say? Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, but now I did. Yes,
Play it
I
back.
did. Interesting. There we go. I said it again. All right. I'm out. We'll see you next week or next episode for Age of Ultron, Avengers Age of Ultron, and let's talk about James Spader singing and dancing and all that stuff. And yeah. So Pat, let them know what they can watch. Or excuse me, Pat, let them know what they can listen. Nope. Pat, let them know what they can read.
As always, at the end of each episode, we like to send you home with some recommended reading that follows up on some of the characters and plots presented in this week's film. Our recommended reading section is sponsored by Infinite Heroes, comics, cards, and collectibles in Watertown, Connecticut. If you're in the Connecticut or New England area, it's a great location to pick up comics from Marvel, as well as DC, Image, and more. They also have a large collection of trading cards, toys, and collectibles. Owner Paul Santos has worked in comics for years, most recently as an editor at DC Comics. Ask him for a recommendation and tell him we sent you. Thanks everybody for listening. For some recommended reading for you, I know, when we meet new characters, we usually head to their comic book origins, but we're going to skip all of that from the original team because it really bears no resemblance to the team as we know and love it today. Instead, let's start with Dan Abnett's and Andy Lanning's take on the team from 2008 in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 Legacy. This collects the first 6 issues of the series and stars Star-Lord, Rocket, Gamora, Drax, Groot, Adam Warlock, and Phyla-Vell. In this version, Star-Lord puts together a team to help prevent galaxy-defining wars. Things get a little tricky when they learn how the team actually came together. Next, we're moving to the second iteration of the modern team with Brian Michael Bendis' take in the 2013 to 2015 Guardians of the Galaxy series. Bendis is going to be a regular on these recommended reading lists, so get used to him. This series was launched in anticipation of the Guardians film and features all your favorites, Quill, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, Groot, and the surprising inclusion of Iron Man himself. Check out Volume 1, Cosmic Avengers, to learn why Earth is constantly the target of various invasions and may be the most important planet out there. Heard about Pluto? Messed up, right? And because I couldn't conclude this segment without some love for Rodent, or Raccoon, or Rocket, check out Rocket Raccoon Volume 1, Chasing Tail by Scotty Young. This fun little adventure is full of wacky twists and turns and even sheds some light on Rocket's origins. We know, Bradley Cooper deserved an Oscar for Rocket. This will help you get over it, we think.